PlayStation VR 2. I've had one since launch, and I've not really used it much since the days, maybe weeks following launch. This device has been collecting dust, and I want to find excuses and reasons to keep using it, but I don't just feel like Sony's been supporting it all that well. I kind of forgot about it for a while until I started hearing news that it is not selling particularly well, which is a shame because the technology of PlayStation VR 2 is fantastic. Like the screens are really nice, the resolution is pretty high, and the eye tracking works really well. And for what you get with this technology, value-wise, it's pretty good, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still an expensive device. To be able to experience PlayStation VR 2, you have to get the $550 PlayStation VR 2 package and then combine that with a PlayStation 5, which at minimum costs $400 if you get the digital edition. So we're talking about an investment that is almost $1,000. And so when you put it in that perspective, it's not too far off from other VR headsets like, say, the Index. And so the thing that is going to drive PSVR 2 sales is software. And unfortunately, that's where PSVR 2 is lacking. Like, it does have games, especially from third party, but in terms of first party releases that really highlight the power of PSVR 2, that act as like system sellers, those are the titles that this platform is missing. And the end result is that interest surrounding PSVR 2 has waned significantly throughout the course of what is now a 1 year long lifespan of this hardware that feels like it might not be headed in a good direction if it doesn't course correct fast. So the following report comes from news outlet Bloomberg with a headline that reads, Sony hits pause on PSVR 2 production as unsold inventory piles up. That's right, PlayStation VR 2 is selling so poorly that there's now a surplus of these things out there, and they have to stop making PSVR 2s. They have to stop production temporarily so that the demand has some time to be able to get these things off store shelves. As reiterated in the body of this article, Sony has paused production of its PSVR 2 headset until it clears a backlog of unsold units. When your supply curve is greater than your demand curve, that's when you know that a product is in trouble. And the thing about PSVR 2 in particular is that sales have not been steady. They've actually been on a decline. They've actually slowed down progressively from quarter to quarter. You'll see right here that in quarter one of 2023, around the time when PSVR 2 shipped, PlayStation VR 2 managed to ship almost 600,000 units, but then that number dropped significantly in the following quarter. During quarter two of 2023, they only shipped 435.3 thousand PlayStation VR 2 units. Then the following quarter, quarter three of 2023, that number dropped even further to 343.6 thousand units. And then finally in quarter four, the latest numbers, 325.2 thousand units. Not only is that less than 2 million units sold in the span of a year, 1.7 million units roughly to be exact, that's just a fraction of the over 50 million people who own PlayStation 5s. During the early stages of a hardware's life cycle, while the iron is still hot, you want to see a curve that is more similar to, say, what the Meta Quest is seeing here, which you can see right here. Not only outsold PlayStation VR 2 every quarter, but that number slowly either maintained the sales pace or just, straight up went up slowly and actually escalated significantly in quarter four of 2023. What you want to see with hardware sales is a bell curve where there's this initial period where it's pretty hype, then it peaks in sales after some time, and then that starts dropping off once there's enough saturation of people who bought the hardware. With PlayStation VR 2, we're seeing an immediate decline in the pace at which the hardware is selling. And so that bodes very poorly. I'm curious if Sony expected this or if this is below their expectations. I get the sense that they were expecting this to be an uphill climb, but they weren't expecting sales to kind of fumble this much, judging by the fact that they made and shipped too many units. and are now stopping production. Now, there are forecasts that with Apple recently having reignited the VR landscape with the recent launch of the Apple Vision Pro, and with VR becoming sort of more normalized and commonplace, it is forecasted that the VR market as a whole will grow on average 31.5% per year between 2023 and 2028, which will hopefully provide some kind of boost for PlayStation VR 2. But PlayStation VR 2 itself is competing with other VR devices, and it has to find a way to stand out from the pack with more competitive pricing. But also, the main thing is it needs that system seller. It's been around a year since PSVR 2's launch, and in that time, Sony has only published 2 PlayStation Studios developed first-party exclusive games for the hardware, and they are Horizon Call of the Mountain and the VR update for Gran Turismo 7. I've played both. Horizon Call of the Mountain is pretty meh, I'd say. Like, it's a good, I'd say, tech showcase and tech demo for PSVR 2 that utilizes its features and highlights the fidelity that the screens can provide and how powerful the hardware is. But I wouldn't say that it's a system seller game. I wouldn't say it's the thing that's going to open your eyes about the potential of VR. I think Half-Life Alyx is still the gold standard on that front. Now, Gran Turismo 7, playing a racing game like this in VR was definitely eye-opening for me. This is a really cool experience, but it is ultimately an update to an existing game, and this one game alone isn't gonna allow the pace of PSVR 2 sales to see the increase that Sony wants to see. There needs to be a consistent release of compelling VR experiences. Sony needs to really support PSVR 2 better in terms of software, lest this become yet another PlayStation Vita where the hardware is definitely compelling and people love what the device can do, but things get tough for a minute and Sony kind of drops out and decides that it's not worth the support. That's how PS Vita died, whereas, you know, like Nintendo, they struggled with 3DS initially, but they kept supporting it and they kept coming out with amazing exclusive releases, and eventually sales picked up. PSVR 2 needs the 3DS treatment, not the Vita treatment right now, if it hopes for any chance of weathering this storm. But it doesn't bode well that Sony last month, as part of their mass layoffs, recently shut down the PlayStation London division, which focused largely on making virtual reality games. Now, that's not to say that this is an indication that they're winding down VR operations or anything like that, but it is a major leg of their VR department that they decided to cut off. And so as far as optics are concerned, this makes it look like Sony is sort of starting to backpedal on support for PSVR 2, and they just haven't announced anything lately that has reignited my passion for PSVR 2. It's just kind of sitting there. And if you look at the list of exclusives for PSVR 2, you'll find that it's pretty paltry. So right here we have a list from Wikipedia, and any games with this background color is a PSVR 2 exclusive. You can see right here, they're only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I think that's it, 10 total PSVR exclusives. And of those, only a handful are more than just kind of meh experiences, are actually good, fun, compelling showcases for PSVR 2. I'd say among those games include Gran Turismo 7 and the 2 Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village, which got VR updates. And when that's roughly all you have to work with as far as reasons to specifically purchase PSVR 2 over competitors, it really does paint a pretty clear picture for why PSVR 2 isn't selling particularly well. Sony thus far has not provided compelling enough reasons or a consistent cadence of release as far as software reasons go to make this a compelling proposition for those outside of the more hardcore VR fans, if that makes sense. Like, the masses really don't seem to care about PSVR 2. It's simply not catching on. Now, one strategy that they're aiming for to mitigate waning sales and to try to boost sales numbers is testing out the ability to use PlayStation VR 2 to access additional games on PC. They're actually testing PC support for PSVR 2, and at the price point of $550, maybe that'll be a compelling proposition option to use that device as a way to access PC VR games. If testing is successful and they actually manage to get PSVR 2 working for PC hardware, then this could be a smart move, as that expands the market of PlayStation VR 2 to not just people who own PlayStation 5s, but to the vast number of customers who own PCs and might be interested in VR gaming. But I really hope that PSVR 2 doesn't just become a PC headset. I really do hope that Sony and their PlayStation studios have got some amazing stuff cooking that maybe is taking more time than they had hoped, but down the line will really show us why PSVR 2 is the VR headset to get, because otherwise this is going to be a huge waste of time, manpower, and resources. This is going to cost Sony a lot of money. Like, I just don't feel like there's anything exciting on the horizon. This fire is starting to die out, and Sony desperately needs to add some Kindle here before it's too late, before there's no chance for this hardware to make a recovery. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on PSVR 2, if you've played it yourself, if you've checked it out, and what you think about the experience, whether you're personally satisfied with the games that are on it, and what you think Sony needs to do to spruce up sales for PSVR 2. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.